What was your first experience when you first saw something that you had built being out in the wild?
My first experience was going to Rio de Janeiro. You have to fly all the crew to Rio to go live into the company. And this is like a 24/7 type of technology that actually controls the energy company can close and open a energy line. So it was a very very important software. When we install everything, we put everything up and running on the server. It was a transition that's come from the old software to the new, so it was like just a switch button. And when they switched that, a lot of stuff came over, and there's a lot of information coming in, and a lot of errors popping up as well. And it was like something that we have to stay like overnight to fixing and solving the problems. And it was really interesting because at the end of the day, it's like there's like, for example, engineers on the line working on an electricity line, and their lives on the line as well. So like that was very frightening, very anxious, but at the same time, when you see that was working and we didn't have any major problems, it was like a relief, and I saw that working was really cool. That was really nice to see. The following is the conversation between me and Graham Grieve. Graham is a business developer and startup builder who recently moved from US to Ireland. This is Ways of Working podcast. Please check our partners on the description. So start talking like about you, like who's Graham, and talk about a little bit of background and where you came from and how you end up in Ireland.
Okay. And
Yeah, yeah,
start there.
yeah. You can
Okay,
just
so we're
start there.
recording. Cool.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so I got into a career thinking that I was going into foreign policy and international relations. I majored in international relations
Mm-hmm.
at Colgate University in upstate New York, and then went down to Washington D.C., worked on Capitol Hill for a little bit, and then got a scholarship to go teach English in Italy for a year. Did that, and then COVID hit, at which point came back to the US and started a Bluetooth-based contact tracing company with my two brothers. And so that was a B2B SaaS company providing a Bluetooth-based contact tracing app to independent schools for their students. And then a school nurse would be able to instantly identify a close contact based on their proximity. Did that for about 2 years. Market shifted. Market didn't need it as much anymore. Did product strategy for another company, and then got started my most recent company this past August. And the question was when it came to Ireland. So met a girl in this past was it January of last year,
Nice.
and she got a job at Google
Cool.
and wanted me to move with her. And so that was like 3 months into our relationship. And I said yes because I was working remotely at the time, and I said
Mm-hmm.
yes, let's go for it. So made a jump with her, and it was probably the best decision of my life. So here I am in Ireland, which I never expected, but you know, life happens.
Yeah, that's cool, man. And so, explain a little bit more, like, how was your process of like coming to Ireland as a visa perspective? Like, it was hard for you to get the visa and start working here, or for you was like, okay, so I just came here and boom, 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 visa, and that's it. I start working.
Yeah, I think for me it was not easy. You've got 3 months to get a visa if you're coming here because you've got
Mm-hmm.
like a tourist visa for 3 months. Um, Now, I think the challenge for us and the challenge that I had was looking for jobs in Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in and without having a visa,
Yeah.
a lot of companies did not want to hire me because they said, especially as an English speaker,
Mm.
while I'm guessing for a lot of people who are coming from different parts of the world, where it's like they're coming from Spanish speaking countries. There are a lot of tech companies in Dublin that are facing those Spanish markets,
Mm-hmm.
and they need Spanish speakers. So they're probably actively looking to fill those spots.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a law in Ireland that says that at least something like 50% of your company
Mm.
needs to be, or 50% of the office in Dublin needs to be locals from Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
And so they want to give their English speaking roles to those people. So
Yeah.
any job based in the UKI markets are
Mm-hmm.
typically going to go to locals. And so it was pretty challenging to find something here. And then I think the other challenge, at least coming from the US and coming from like San Francisco, where the cost of living is much higher, and so the salaries are much
Mm-hmm.
higher relatively, getting offers that were, like
Nominally,
50%.
yeah. When you see the nominal salary, you feel like, oh my God, that's so different. But by the
Yeah.
cost of living perspective, do you think is the same as US, like in San Francisco? Or you feel like even though there's this difference between taxes and everything, San Francisco still pay higher, like you take home way more than here?
The I think the cost of living in San Francisco is much higher.
Yeah.
And now relatively to the wages that you're getting,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I'm working on a pre-seed startup now, so
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm not sure that, what's the, how much are you taking home is more. I'm not sure about the
Mm-hmm.
answer there.
Mm-hmm.
But the cost of living in San Francisco is higher relatively to salaries, though. I'm not sure.
I see. Yeah. That's all right. And yeah, you mentioned now you're working with a pre-seed startup and you're building this company. And I'm using your app all the time now, to be honest. And yeah, so how what is the difference in the process of building a business in a foreign country like Ireland and the US? Do you found any challenge here that is way bigger than the US, or you feel like this Ireland startup ecosystem is somewhat like close to what you have seen in US?
Yeah, I think the Irish startup ecosystem is definitely bubbling up, and I think
Mm.
there's real opportunity for it to become, I don't know, a significant player.
Mm-hmm.
I think probably one of the biggest lacking pieces is almost that connection between early stage startups, the surrounding ecosystem, and funding and capital.
Mm-hmm.
In the US, I think it's much easier there's more access to capital. Now the benefit in Dublin is that it is a small ecosystem.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can have a legitimate startup that is actually solving a real problem,
Mm-hmm.
getting to the handful of VCs that are here and getting in front of them isn't that difficult. Well, I think in
Yeah.
the US, there's so many talented startups that, I mean, there are a lot of VCs, but getting to like kind of the top players in the market is another game entirely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's interesting. And have you looked into all the markets in Europe like Amsterdam and Germany? Or are you still like only focus on in Ireland here on the Irish startup ecosystem, or you have like seen other ecosystems and you be able to compare them?
So we're talking to investors
Mm-hmm.
in the US, in Ireland, in the UK, a couple in like Copenhagen, and the benefit for, I think, Enterprise Ireland, and there are a lot of good funding supports to get started at an early stage,
Mm-hmm.
that I think that are more accessible in Ireland than they are in other countries. So I
Okay.
think from getting moving,
Mm-hmm.
going from kind of 0 to 1 is probably maybe even easier in Ireland if you have an engineer. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
If you have an engineer, if you have a co-founder, going from 0 to 1 in Ireland may actually be easier than in other places because of the local funding supports, which are pretty accessible and actually well advertised. The other markets, but I mean, with like in a day of Zoom calls and everything, it's easy to have investor conversations with people in other markets. The question then becomes like, where do you establish? Do you open up your company to U.S. investments by establishing Delaware C Corp, or do you open it up in Dublin and get those early stage supports and open yourselves up for better tax benefits down the line, but maybe close yourself off for U.S. investment? So it's kind of a bit of a constant tug and pull.
I see. Yeah. So talk a little bit more about your product, the startup that you're building, and what you've been doing so far, because I feel that's interesting, and I feel like the people should know what you're doing.
Yeah. So Forward is, I'll kind of ground in the actual story of the company. My co-founder Alex was a senior software engineer at Meta.
Nice.
And he was facing this problem where he was constantly getting interrupted by the need to retrieve information he had previously seen. And he would first get interrupted by having to search for that information, and then distracted by the 50 plus tabs he had opened and all the other information he would come across during that search for that information. And what we realized that today, the reason that we don't have that information kind of at our fingertips when we want to grab a relevant link for a colleague, if we want to add additional context to a pull request or add additional resources to an email that we're sending, the reason that we don't collect the information we consume, and so because we don't bring that information with us, we have to constantly go back to the source every time we need to retrieve something. And so what we're building is Forward. You may know it as Mazed, but there's a bit of a rebrand going on.
That's good.
But Forward gives you momentum online, and the way we do that is it retains everything you read for you automatically. It's your second brain built into your browser. It retains everything you read automatically, processes that information locally, overcoming privacy and security concerns, and then as you're writing, it serves you your relevant links and text fragments, allowing you to reference and link anything you've seen without searching for it. So you can continue moving, having your forward momentum online, and grabbing links that are relevant without having to constantly go back to the source.
Nice. That's cool. That's pretty interesting. And actually, I want to talk to you about this thing after we talk this thing, because I had an idea this weekend and I really wanted to talk to you about it. So we can brainstorm after this. But yeah, so you've been doing all of this networking, contacting a lot of people and everything, and you hosting as well your own networking as well. So how is that for you? Like how's your view about networking and building a community for entrepreneurs here in Ireland? And how is perspective between like networking with other VCs in different countries?
So if I understand the question correctly, how is it different here than in other countries?
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, so this is the third country I've lived in, because I've lived in the U.S. where I grew up. I've lived in Italy where I didn't speak the language and didn't know anyone, and lived here. In the U.S., it was very much like, I would network around for the next opportunity. I would, grab coffee with one person, and that culture of networking was very well established. And you would go from someone who was a couple of years in college ahead of you, and then kind of network from there. Here I came in without a network in Dublin. And so I reached out to you. I think I saw you on LinkedIn as like one of the, or were you an accelerator or pre-accelerator? I'm not sure, but reached out to you on LinkedIn. I just stepped in without knowing anyone, and just decided to like go meet people in the startup ecosystem and go from there. It takes a lot of cold outreach if you don't know anyone. The way you kind of think you have to see it is that the answer is always no until you ask, and you kind of have to start somewhere, and so just meeting people, putting yourself out there is the best way to do it. I've got the Wednesday tech meetup. I started that because I wanted to meet more people, and just like messaging them on LinkedIn for kind of a random hobby chat wasn't always like what people wanted. And so I decided to just build an event where people could come and talk about tech on Wednesday. And I would meet people through that, and so it's worked. I've met a lot of people in kind of different fields and doing different cool things. So doing the if they build it, they will come attitude.
Right, nice. That's nice, man. That's cool. And yeah, so I want to go back to the COVID period that you say like you hate there, and you have like these sorry.
You said I want to go back to the COVID period, and I said I don't.
No, it's all right. Just want to remember this time, right? Like you're saying that during COVID, at the beginning of the COVID, you have this startup with your brothers, right? And how this changed, how the COVID changed the way that you did business in US? Like it was harder to reach out and sell your product, was easier, and then how do you feel that impact a startup ecosystem in US, for example?
I think there's a massive shift to Zoom-based communication. People need Zoom. While a lot of investor conversations previously, from my understanding, was all in person, a lot of those initial conversations then went online and virtual. And I think what a lot of people realize is that they can meet a lot more people, have a lot more meetings by just having 30-minute Zoom calls with each other, rather than having to build in the travel time to go meet someone at a local coffee shop. Now, that does lose a lot is lost, I think, in the relationship building part of that, which actually is a very big piece of fundraising. And so while the Zoom-based communication has stayed around, I do think that has opened up a lot of opportunities for global startups. And this push from remote work by US employees and US workers will probably come back to bite them, because if everyone's remote, it's like, well, if I'm going to meet with everyone remote, why don't I have my employees in a much cheaper part of the world where they're doing just as much work and maybe working harder than US employees? Or do I want, if it's a company that, if they're fundraising, maybe having a company that's selling into the US from Ireland, where they have like 30% like they pay 30% less taxes. Over time, that is a more profitable business. Or that company will have more cash on hand. So I do think the shift to online communication will benefit countries and people in countries, ways that where access was much more like you have to be in San Francisco. That being said, I do think has been kind of maybe a backlash from that, but there's definitely a stickiness of that trend.
It's true. It's all right, like I feel like COVID bring to us a little bit of like changes on the way that work-based relationships. But it seemed like recently, like Elon Musk trashing working from home, and it'd say like, oh, people have to go back to work, to the office and everything. And I feel that is a lot of like, as I say before about like companies, they have this thing that's gonna backfire at them, where if they can have the workers working from anywhere, they can hire people from other countries. At the same time, you have this problem as well where these companies, they are compromised with a lot of office space that they rented, and now they have like all of these expenses coming over like for the next 2 3 years. They have to justify that, right? So if they don't justify, why they're gonna have an office though? So it's a weird thing that's happening, in this kind of like how can I say, it's kind of like a push from each side, like some people wants to go back to the office, some people wants to work remotely. Is I think that the next 2 to 3 years we're gonna see what's gonna happen and on this matter.
Yeah, and I I think Elon's onto something.
He
Like,
is, yeah.
I'd much rather be next to someone working in person than to be chatting with them on Slack.
Mm-hmm.
There's just kind of a lot more is lost in virtual communication today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I do think though that there's clear benefits of remote work, and there have been also clear problems identified with it that can be solved and will be solved by entrepreneurs. And that's something that we're currently working on by allowing people to share context in a more efficient manner, where you're kind of removing the barrier to sharing context with each other. And so, I mean, generally, there will be solutions. There will be a patchwork of solutions that all go to solve this problem. And I think that the remote work world is very much kind of where we're headed. And today it doesn't get close to the in-person experience, but in the future it will.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. I think like when a billionaire is onto something, I think you have to hear at least a little bit. Have to consider, because it's not just him. He have like a whole team behind him, and he have their efforts and money to do some research and understand like what's going on better than us. And maybe he's onto something. Let's see what's gonna happen. But yeah. So I sorry. Say.
Yeah, and when was the last time you had an in-person role?
It's 2019, I think. It's been 3 years now. Yeah. I've been working more hybrid. And for me, the point is more like when the company I was working, they came over to me and said, look, you can choose hybrid or fully remote. My problem was every time that I go back to the office, I don't have like my workspace set up the way that I want to. So that's for me the problem. That's for me like I set up like my environment in my table here. That's my screen, that's my notebook. And when I go back to the office, I have like a screen that doesn't work properly. There's all this stuff that actually makes me less productive, I think, when I'm in the office. And there's a point too that I'm easily distracted by noises. So for me, it's very important to, for example, when I go to the office, I had a headset on because I have to be listening to music to be concentrated on my work. So sometimes it's more like back and forth, like noises in the office. I get distracted, but at the same time, it's very easy as well to, when you're in the office, even though with a headset you're on space, but you need to talk to someone, it's very easy to just go over to the person, talk to them, and just you easily fix that issue instead of like waiting for the person that's on a meeting on a Zoom to finish that, and by the time that the person finished, the person forgot what happened, and then you be like stuck in some tasks that you be way easier if in the office you see the person is on the meeting, so I'm not going to talk to them now. When the person's come back from the meeting, you can just easily reach out to them there at that moment, and you can easily fix things and can just like have this workflow go faster in a way that it can be more, for me, it's a productive way. I like the office, but at the same time I like my own space.
And now that in-person experience that you just described, it solves your problem, but it may actually be more of an interruption for them.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
maybe
it's true.
maybe they like not.
I'm give my own vision, and that's maybe not be the best for anyone. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I look back at my early kind of office experiences, and I was very distraction prone. Let's leave it at that. So Uh,
Yeah.
the remote experience.
Oh man, my day in the office for me is very hard when if the office is loud. And the problem is like any office that I work with, even like the open offices of that is the this like walls and everything. Every time there is a noise close to me, it distracts me if I don't have my headset on. So then that was a problem. So like there's ways to be productive in the office. There's ways to be productive at home. I I prefer to be in a space where I have my own setup and my own environment. And at the moment, it's at home, so that's why I prefer to stay at home. Okay.
Yeah. And so last note on this, I
Yeah,
started
yeah.
coming to WeWork just because I think there's a fine balance. Like, you do need like the social interaction
Yeah, it's true.
that being office, being a person provides, while also having room for deep work. And yeah,
That's cool.
anyway,
Anyway, all right. So I prepare one philosophical quote, and it's a guy called Mark Twain. I don't know if you know him, and he's a writer of Citizens Abroad, and he have like this quote that's I'm just gonna read here because I don't want to butcher anything. So it says that work consists of whatever a body is obliged to do, and play consists of whatever a body is not obliged to do. So it's kind of like saying that probably work is necessary in our lives, you know. So, but then I believe in these questions. That's why I always come with like these philosophical questions to the people I'm interviewing, is because I believe that is a way to find value on work, and the value on work I mean bring to find joy and fulfillment. So my question back to you would be like, how do you find like joy and fulfillment on what you do?
yeah. So I've always kind of had the feeling that I need to be working on something that I care about.
Hmm.
And if I don't care about something as much, it will be hard to get the best work out of me.
Hmm.
And I think going back to school, where I was a decent student in most classes, but I was kind of going through the motions.
Mm-hmm.
When it came to like a course that I really cared about, I would do the reading not because I was told to, but because I actually really want to do the reading. And as a result, I got much better grades because I did the reading. I was prepared. I knew everything and
Hmm.
could go from there. And that same experience is factored into my work life and my career. And I think with the reason I enjoy working on startups is I can work on my own dream. I can
Hmm.
build something that I care about,
Yeah.
rather than someone else's dream. And because I'm working on something that I care about, everything that I'm learning on a day-to-day basis, I'm thinking about how I can incorporate it into my own business.
Hmm.
And that that experience of being able to work on something you actively care about it and do that every single day allows me to be more productive, allows me to do my best work and actually enjoy what I'm doing rather than just like dreading Mondays and dreading the 9 to 5 work lifestyle.
Hmm.
Now,
Yeah.
there's it's not all sunshine and roses,
Exactly. Yeah. It's
obviously.
true.
It's very difficult, but I think generally my goal is to be able to spend my life working on things that I really care about and that I can believe it will have a very large impact in society.
Hmm.
And if I'm able to do that, um, then going through the pain at the very beginning to get there is definitely worthwhile pain.
Yeah. Exactly. Well, that's amazing, man. That's an amazing answer. That's really cool. And yeah. So bringing this I feel that's a lot of things, you know, that what you brought it's really important. And I feel like that's a really nice, that's a really good insight. And and something that actually resonated with me because I think somewhat like that as well. Like when I want to work on something, I feel like if I'm making a product that gonna improve someone else's way of like either productivity or a way that they can travel or a way that they can do other stuff, that's for me is something that really brings me joy. And yeah, that's really cool, man. It's
What
nice.
was what was what was your first experience when you first saw something that you built being out in the wild?
My first experience was so I was going to Rio de Janeiro because this company I worked from my hometown Belo Horizonte, so we have to fly all the crew to Rio to go live into the company. And this is like a 24/7 type of technology that actually controls the way that the energy company can close and open a energy line. So it was a very important software that we were implemented. And when we install everything, we put everything up and running on the server, and we said to guys, look, let's start, and then let's start now, because it was a transition that's come from the old software to the new, so it was like just a switch button. And when they switched that, a lot of stuff came over, and there's a lot of information coming in and a lot of errors popping up as well. And it was like something that we have to stay like overnight to fixing and solving the problems. And it was really interesting because at the end of the day, it's like it was it was very important to have everything up and running, to because there's like, for example, engineers on the line working on an electricity line, and their lives on the line as well. So like that was very frightening, very anxious, but at the same time, when you see that was working and we didn't have any major problems, it was like a relief, and I saw that working was really cool. That was really nice to see. It was a very difficult experience, but at the same time, like it is hard. It was a hard piece of software, but it was cool. How was
Yeah, I
yours?
mean,
How was your experience?
yeah, I mean, we had a similar experience of bringing a product to market, and then this is on my previous company where we brought a product to market, and bugs pop up, and it was very stressful.
Mm,
But once we were able to kind of solve those bugs and get through that, like very very hectic time, seeing people actually use the product and
yeah.
seeing it solve their problems and actually hearing their customer stories of like saying, yeah, like it saved me so much time, or
Mm,
in our case it prevented an outbreak of COVID.
mm,
That was an
that's
amazing
good.
experience, and seeing that we were actually solving a problem and actually making an impact. um, I think it was in that moment that I realized that that was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. I mean,
Nice.
going back to my early experience, or my early career of going into government, where anything you do is very loosely connected to your constituents.
Oh
Like you
yes.
might be, it's very hard to have like a direct impact and actually see it in action.
Hmm. Hmm.
No, yeah, that was just a really good feeling.
Nice, nice. Cool. Hey, listen, man. Thank you very much. And yeah, so I'm gonna stop.
I mean,
No, do you wanted to leave any message, any other information you wanted to share?
no, I mean, if you are interested in what we're doing with Forward, or want to connect with me, want to chat further, feel free to just connect with me on LinkedIn or Twitter. It's at Graham Grieve. Yeah, happy to chat.
All right, perfect, man. Listen, thank you very much.